This is eternal human spirit, where every story proves why humanity never breaks.
The Council's verdict. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with shadows and light. A great hall carved from black stone and glowing silver metal. Ancient banners of alien empires hung from the walls, each representing species that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. At the very center sat the high seats of the Council, where beings of unimaginable age and power leaned forward, their voices echoing like thunder in the vast dome. Today they had gathered to make a final judgment, and their subject was humanity. The Council's head speaker, a tall reptilian creature with scales that shimmered like polished obsidian, raised his claw to silence the chamber. His voice was cold, sharp, and final. Humanity is doomed. Their spirit is weak. Their history is filled with failure, wars, and mistakes. They cannot survive in the order of the galaxy. Our decree will be extinction. They will not be allowed to spread beyond their small homeworld. Murmurs spread among the gathered aliens. The insectoid chancellors clicked their mandibles in agreement, their wings humming with cruel delight. The avian delegates tilted their heads, their feathers trembling as they laughed at the thought of human weakness. They all remembered Earth's fragile body compared to their own, short lives compared to their centuries, soft skin compared to armor. They saw only weakness. Yet among them sat an older alien, a historian from a small neutral race. His eyes glowed dimly as he remembered stories hidden deep in the archives. He had studied ancient human wars, tales of empires that rose and fell on Earth, disasters that should have destroyed the species but somehow did not. He cleared his throat and spoke softly. "Do not underestimate them. I have seen their history. I have seen their spirit. They are not as weak as you believe. They endure." But his warning was drowned by laughter. The Council banged their staffs on the stone floor. The reptilian head speaker sneered, "Endure. They are children, clinging to a fragile rock. Their species will collapse under its own failures. Their time is over. We declare humanity doomed." The decree was signed. Glowing symbols burned across the Council chamber. The words of doom were sealed into the galaxy's law, and the voices of millions of alien systems would hear them by the next rotation. Humanity had been judged unworthy. Humanity had been declared finished. Outside the chamber, hidden in the shadows of the great pillars, stood a lone human. His name was Captain Elias. He had come as an observer, believing perhaps the Council would give Earth a chance. His uniform was old and patched, his boots worn from long journeys, yet his eyes burned with fire. He had heard every word, every insult, every sentence of doom. His hands shook as he clenched them into fists. The memory of his people flashed. Before his eyes, the cities of Earth struggling yet alive, the colonies in distant systems refusing to die even when food was scarce, the children playing in broken streets but still laughing. He thought of the voices of his ancestors, who survived war, famine, fire, and endless hardship. He thought of the unbroken chain of survival that led him here, standing in the heart of the galaxy, listening to the Council declare the end of his people. A whisper escaped his lips, soft but filled with steel. "They will see. They will see. Why we endure." The chamber doors opened with a heavy sound. The alien guards marched past him, their glowing eyes filled with contempt. They did not see the quiet fury in the human's heart. They did not understand that their decree had not ended humanity. It had only awakened something far greater. Captain Elias turned away from the Council chamber. He walked down the long corridor carved with alien symbols. The echoes of laughter and doom still rang behind him, but with each step he felt something rise inside him, something older than the Council itself, the spirit of defiance. Outside, the stars stretched across the blackness of space, cold and endless. Yet to Elias, they no longer looked like a void. They looked like a battlefield waiting to be claimed. In the council chamber, the aliens celebrated their decision. They believed humanity had been erased from history. They believed they had spoken the final word, but far away, a human captain whispered a promise into the silence of the void. We will endure. We will fight. We will rise. And when the galaxy remembers this day, it will not remember your decree. It will remember our defiance. And so began the story of a species that would not break. The decree of doom was written, but the true verdict of history had not yet been decided. For in the heart of one human, the fire of resistance had been lit, a fire that would spread and shake the stars. The last warning. The message of the Council's decree spread across the galaxy like fire in dry grass. Carried by data streams and messenger fleets, the words, "Humanity is doomed," were broadcast into every star system, on alien marketplaces. Traders laughed as they showed humans being mocked in news hollows. In military academies of distant species, instructors used humans as examples of what not to become. Fragile, reckless, disorganized, unfit for survival. The decree of doom was treated as law, a warning that no one should ally with mankind. On Earth, the people received the verdict with a mix of anger and despair. Families huddled and crowded. Shelters listening to the alien transmissions. Children asked their parents if it was true. If the galaxy had already decided their end, many leaders on Earth were divided. Some said surrender might save them from destruction. Others said they must resist no matter the cost. But in every human heart, the decree burned like a wound, and wounds do not heal without leaving scars. Captain Elias returned to Earth under a veil of silence. His ship landed in the ruins of what had once been a great city. The air was filled with smoke and dust from old wars that humanity had already fought among themselves. Yet, even in ruins, the people survived. He walked through broken streets, where children still played with scraps of metal shaped into toys, where mothers carried food grown in hidden gardens, where fathers rebuilt walls with bare hands. The council had declared these people doomed, but Elias saw only survival. He gathered a meeting in an abandoned assembly hall. People crowded in, some wearing patched uniforms, others in work clothes covered with soot and dirt. They looked tired, beaten, and hungry, but their eyes still carried light. Elias stood before them, his voice echoing in the empty hall. The council has judged us finished. They believe our story is over, but I say no. We have not fallen. We will not bow. We will not let them erase us. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some cheered. Some wept. Some looked afraid, for they knew what defiance meant. The council did not make empty threats. If humanity resisted, fleets would come. Weapons would burn their cities. Their children would be the ones to pay the price. A woman stood and asked with trembling voice, "Captain, how can we fight an empire of thousands of worlds? We have no fleets, no armies strong enough, no allies." Elias's eyes burned with fire as he answered, "We fight not with numbers, but with spirit. We fight not for victory alone, but to prove we cannot be erased. The galaxy thinks we are weak, but they do not know us. They do not know what it means to be human. We endure, we adapt, we rise even in the ashes." The hall shook with voices, rising in agreement, yet fear still lingered in many hearts. Elias knew words were not enough. He needed to show them hope. He needed to prepare them for the storm that was already coming, for the council would not wait. Their decree was more than words. It was a sentence, and soon the executioners would arrive. Days later, the first alien fleets appeared on the edges of human space. Vast warships shaped like blades of obsidian and silver, engines burning like suns. They hovered above colonies, their loudspeakers echoing across the skies. Submit or be destroyed. Humanity has been declared finished by the Council. Obey, and you may live as slaves. Resist, and you will die. On one colony world, a governor raised a white flag, hoping surrender would spare his people. But when the alien commander landed, he laughed and crushed the flag under his claw. "The Council has no use for slaves that cannot endure. You are nothing but a warning to others." His fleet burned the colony within hours, leaving ashes and silence behind. Word of this massacre spread quickly. Fear grew sharper, but so did anger. On Earth, Elias stood before a gathering of volunteers, men and women who had seen the flames and had chosen not to surrender. Their ships were old, their weapons were outdated, but their hearts burned with fire. Elias looked at them and declared, "The Council has given us a last warning. They think fear will break us. They think fire will silence us, but let this be our answer. We will not bend. We will not kneel. Let the galaxy watch. Let them see what humans do when told to die." That night, humans across Earth and the colonies lit torches on their rooftops, signals of unity that burned against the darkness. A cross. The galaxy, alien observers watched in confusion. The humans had been given their verdict. They had been warned. Yet instead of silence, they answered with fire. In the council chamber, reports arrived of resistance spreading. The reptilian head speaker hissed with rage. "They do not understand. They were given a chance to bow. Now they will be crushed without mercy." The older historian spoke again, his voice calm and filled with an unease that others could not hide. "You misunderstand. The more you try to break them, the stronger they become. I fear you have awakened something far greater than you know." Outside in the galaxy's cold night, Captain Elias stared at the stars. His people were afraid. His fleets were weak, and his enemies were beyond count. But in his heart he felt no surrender, for he knew the truth that the Council refused to see. Humanity was not finished. Humanity was only beginning its true fight. Cliffhanger. Ending, as Elias whispered a vow to the stars. A signal came from deep space, an alien fleet moving directly toward Earth, and this time it was not a warning. It was an invasion. The ashes of Earth, the skies above Earth darkened as the alien fleet arrived. Their warships were vast machines of black metal, shaped like predatory birds with wings spread wide. Their engines roared like thunder as they descended into orbit, casting shadows across entire continents. The people of Earth looked up and saw the proof of the Council's decree. The doom that had been promised was no longer distant words. It had arrived in fire and steel. Captain Elias stood on the command deck of his ship, watching the screens as the first wave of alien ships entered the atmosphere. His crew sat in silence, their faces pale but their eyes burning with the same fire that filled their captain's soul. They knew their weapons were old, their defenses weak, and their chances slim. Yet none of them left their posts. None asked for surrender. They knew what was at stake, and they had already made their choice. The aliens broadcast their message again, a cruel voice echoing across the skies. "This world is condemned. Surrender now, and your suffering will be brief. Resist, and you will be burned to ash." For a moment, the cities fell silent. Families huddled together, children clutched their parents, and even the bravest soldiers felt the weight of fear. But then, like sparks in dry grass, resistance began to spread. Lights flared on rooftops, banners were raised on broken towers, and messages flashed across the networks. Humanity had chosen defiance. The first bombardment began. Fire rained from the sky as alien warships unleashed. Their fury, entire districts were reduced to rubble in seconds. Great buildings crumbled, and the earth itself shook under the weight of destruction. Smoke rose in thick columns, turning day into night. The aliens expected the humans to scream, to beg, to run in despair. But in the ruins, something different happened. Men and women pulled survivors from the rubble. Children lifted the human flag and waved it against the burning sky, and soldiers regrouped in the shadows, refusing to abandon the fight. Elias ordered his fleet to strike back. His ships were small. Compared to the alien armada, their weapons old and weak, yet they flew into battle with fearless hearts. A squadron of human fighters streaked across the skies, weaving between enemy fire, striking at weak points with reckless bravery. Many were destroyed in moments, but each loss only fueled the determination of the survivors. The aliens laughed at the weakness of human technology, but deep in their hearts they began to feel unease. For no matter how many ships they destroyed, more humans rose to fight. On the ground, alien troops descended, towering figures in armored suits, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. They marched through ruined streets expecting surrender. Instead, they found ambushes waiting for them. Humans fought from the shadows. With rifles, knives, and even bare hands, they set traps in alleys, detonated explosives under enemy walkers, and used the ruins of their own cities as cover. They were not fighting to win territory. They were fighting to show the galaxy that they would not bow. In one shattered city, an alien commander raised his weapon to strike down a human boy. The child was no older than 10, yet he stood in front of his fallen family holding a tattered human flag. The alien hesitated, for he expected fear. He expected the child to cry or run, but the boy simply raised the flag higher, his eyes filled with defiance. The alien lowered his weapon, shaken by a feeling he could not understand, for in that child's gaze was something stronger than any weapon. Reports of human defiance spread back to the council chamber. The reptilian head speaker growled in fury. "Burn them all. Leave nothing behind. If they refuse to surrender, then let the galaxy see their ashes." The council cheered, in agreement, blind to the truth. They believed that destroying Earth would erase humanity. They did not see that every strike, every fire, every fallen soldier only made humanity's spirit shine brighter. Back on Earth, Captain Elias's ship was struck during the battle. Flames burst across the deck as alarms screamed. His crew struggled to hold the line. Elias himself was thrown to the floor, his uniform torn and blood on his face. Yet he rose, gripping the console, his voice steady. "Hold the line. Fight to the last breath. Let them see us. Let them remember us." His words echoed across the comms, and human pilots, hearing their captain's voice, flew with renewed fury. The battle raged for hours, and Earth burned. Cities became fields of ash, oceans boiled under falling fire, and millions perished. The aliens believed they were breaking humanity, but they did not see the truth hidden in the smoke, for with every loss, humanity's will only grew stronger. In the ashes, a new fire was born, not of destruction, but of spirit, a fire that no bombardment could extinguish. As the last wave of bombardments ended, alien scouts scanned the ruins, expecting silence. Instead, they saw survivors standing on rooftops, waving torn banners, singing songs of defiance. In one shattered city square, thousands gathered, their voices rising as one, even as smoke choked the sky. Their anthem of survival carried across the battlefield, echoing in the ears of the enemy. Captain Elias, wounded but alive, looked upon the burning Earth from his ship. His voice was quiet but unshaken. "They have turned our world to ashes, but they have not broken us. They will never break us." Cliffhanger ending. As Elias spoke, sensors lit up on the console, detecting another alien fleet arriving, larger than the first. The invasion of Earth was not ending. It was only beginning. The human spirit. The Earth smoldered under the weight of the alien bombardments. Cities that once reached proudly into the skies were now piles of stone and fire. Oceans reflected the smoke of 1,000 burning craters, and forests lay in blackened ruins. The alien fleets circled above like vultures, their commanders confident that humanity was finished. They had destroyed the cities, crushed the armies, silenced the governments. In their eyes, the human race had no chance left to rise. For them, this was the end. But in the ruins, something stirred. Beneath broken buildings, survivors crawled. Out, covered in ash and blood, yet their eyes still carried light. They built shelters from rubble, shared what little food they had, and carried the injured on their backs. Families who had lost everything still found ways to comfort their children. Soldiers who had no weapons left sharpened pieces of metal into blades. Farmers turned ruined fields into hidden camps. It was not order, it was not power, it was something far stronger. It was spirit. Captain Elias moved among the survivors. His ship had been crippled, his body was wounded, yet he refused to rest. He carried water to the weak, helped lift stones from the trapped, and spoke words of hope to those who trembled. When people saw him, they remembered that they were not alone, that their leaders had not abandoned them. Elias did not speak of victory, he spoke of survival. He told them that as long as one human still breathed, the Council's decree would never be truth. In distant colonies, the story of Earth's defiance spread. Reports carried whispers of human children raising flags in the ashes, of women standing before alien soldiers with unbroken stares, of men fighting with nothing but fire and knives. Other species who had once mocked humanity began to wonder, how could a doomed race endure so much and still rise? How could fragile beings whose world had been shattered still fight with such fire? On one occupied colony, an alien guard stood watch over human prisoners. The humans were weak, hungry, and chained. The guard expected silence, expected despair. But as night fell, the prisoners began to sing. Their voices were broken and hoarse, yet the song carried across the camp. It was not a song of surrender. It was a song of memory, of hope, of a people who refused to forget who they were. The alien guard shivered, for in that song he felt something he could not destroy. Even among the Council's own soldiers, whispers began to spread. They had fought countless wars, conquered countless worlds, yet never had they seen such defiance. Species greater in number had surrendered. Empires stronger in arms had fallen to their knees. But these humans, small and fragile, refused to break. An alien officer asked his commander, "Why do they fight when there is no hope? Why do they rise when they have already lost?" And the commander had no answer, for the truth was beyond their understanding. Captain Elias gathered the survivors of Earth into hidden camps. He spoke to them not of revenge, but of endurance. They believe they have broken us, but they are blind. They see only ruins, not what lies within us. They see only weakness, not what makes us strong. We are more than flesh and bone. We are spirit, and spirit cannot be burned. His words spread across networks still working in fragments, passed from camp to camp, whispered by families at night until every survivor carried them in their hearts. The Council, watching from afar, grew furious at the reports. They had declared humanity doomed, yet the galaxy was now speaking of their defiance. The reptilian head speaker slammed his claw on the table. "Crush them, burn every last one. Do not let their fire spread." But the old historian shook his head. "It is already too late. Every strike you make only feeds their spirit. You do not see it, but I do. You are forging their legend." His warning was ignored, drowned in the arrogance of those who had never known true resistance. Back on Earth, alien soldiers raided a ruined district, dragging survivors into the open. They wanted to make an example. To show that defiance would be punished, among the captives was a young woman, her clothes torn, her face bruised. An alien commander asked her, "Why do you resist? Your world is dead. Your people are broken. Why not bow and live?" She lifted her head slowly, her voice steady. "Because to bow is worse than death. Because we are human, and humans endure." The alien struck her to the ground, but her words spread like fire. Remembered by every survivor who heard them, Elias knew the battle was not won by weapons, but by belief. He told his people that the true war was not for land or power, but for the soul of humanity. If they proved that their spirit could not be broken, then even in defeat they would have victory. And so, in every ruined street, in every hidden camp, humans fought not just to survive, but to defy. They lit fires against the night, painted messages on the walls, and raised flags on towers of rubble. Each act of defiance was a weapon sharper than steel. The aliens thought they had brought humanity to ashes, but in truth they had only revealed the core of their strength. For the human spirit had become something greater than fear, greater than pain, greater than death itself. And in the silence after each battle, the galaxy listened. The humans were still there, still alive, still unbroken. Cliffhanger. Ending. As Elias stood on the ruins of a once great city, he saw the skies burn again. Another fleet was arriving, larger, darker, filled with soldiers sent to Finn. The battle. Beyond fear. The second alien fleet emerged from the void like a storm without end. Their ships were larger than the first wave, armored with layers of black metal that shimmered like obsidian. Their engines glowed with the light of 100 suns, and their weapons hung ready to erase what little remained of Earth. In the Council's eyes, this was the final blow, the end of a species that had defied their decree for too long. They had given humanity a chance to bow. Humanity had refused. Now they would be crushed under the weight of overwhelming force. Captain Elias stood on the fractured deck of his flagship, patched together with spare parts and powered by failing reactors. The screens before him showed the size of the enemy fleet, far greater than anything his people could resist. For a moment, silence fell on his crew. Fear wrapped around them like a cold chain. Everyone knew the truth. Their weapons were outdated, their shields cracked, their fleets too few. If this battle was measured by numbers alone, it was already lost. But Elias did not measure it by numbers. He measured it by spirit. He spoke to his crew with steady voice. They come with endless fire. They come with endless hate. They think we will bow because they are stronger. But strength is not only in steel. Strength is in the will to rise even when broken. It is in the choice to fight when fear says surrender. Today we show them what it means to be human. Today we fight not to win, but to endure. Today we fight beyond fear. His words echoed across every comm channel, reaching human ships, ground fighters, and hidden survivors across the ruins of Earth. The alien fleet opened fire. Lances of energy struck across the skies, shaking mountains and splitting oceans. Human ships rose to meet them. Old fighters with engines coughing smoke. Carriers built from scraps of steel. Transports armed with nothing but stolen weapons. They were small and fragile against the massive armada. Yet they charged forward without hesitation, weaving through fire with impossible maneuvers. Pilots who had never flown in real war now fought as if their lives meant more than victory, because for them, survival itself was victory. On the ground, alien troops descended again, towers of armored flesh and steel. Their weapons blazed across the ruined cities. They expected humans to scatter like insects. Instead, they found resistance waiting in every shadow. Families who had lost their homes turned their grief into fury. Workers who had built shelters turned tunnels into traps. Children carried messages between fighters. Old men carried rifles from forgotten wars. Humanity itself had become the battlefield. Every street, every home, every ruin was a weapon in their hands. Elias's ship took a direct hit. Alarms screamed, flames burst from the engines, and his crew staggered under the force. Yet no one abandoned their post. "Keep firing," Elias ordered, his voice steady. "If this ship must fall, it will fall with fire in its guns." Across the fleet, captains echoed the same spirit. "We may not survive, but let them remember us. Let them remember that we did not run, that we did not kneel." The aliens grew frustrated. They had expected a quick extermination. Instead, every human death became a spark of resistance. Every destroyed ship bought time for another to strike. Every fallen soldier gave rise to two more. In their arrogance, the aliens had never faced an enemy who fought not for power, not for conquest, but for survival of spirit. They began to ask themselves questions they could not answer. Why do they not break? Why do they keep rising? Why do they fight when defeat is certain? On one battlefield, an alien commander cornered a small group of human fighters. Outnumbered and outgunned, the humans refused to retreat. The commander sneered, "You cannot win. Why do you throw away your lives?" A human soldier raised his rifle, blood dripping from his wounds, and said with a smile, "Because even if we fall, our spirit does not. You cannot kill what you cannot understand." The commander fired, and the soldier fell, but his words lingered in the minds of all who heard them. Elias sent one final transmission as his ship burned. His voice carried across every surviving human channel. To every man, woman, and child, to every soul that still breathes, we may not survive this battle, but survival is not always victory. Victory is proving that we cannot be erased. Victory is fighting until the stars themselves remember our spirit. Fight for your families. Fight for your children. Fight so that when they tell the story of this day, they will know we stood beyond fear. His words ignited something deeper than courage. Human fighters dove into alien capital ships, sacrificing themselves to cripple weapons. Ground fighters set off massive explosions that tore apart enemy walkers. Survivors who had nothing left but stones and fire hurled them at armored soldiers. Humanity was no longer fighting to win land or cities. Humanity was fighting to prove the Council wrong. Humanity was fighting to show the galaxy that spirit cannot be destroyed. Hours passed, the battlefield consumed by fire and smoke. Human losses were endless, yet the aliens were shaken. For every city they reduced to ash, voices rose singing in the ruins. For every ship they destroyed, another one flung itself into battle. The aliens had power, but the humans had something greater. They had belief, and belief cannot be erased by fire. As the alien fleet began to regroup for a final strike, Elias stood at the burning console of his ship, his body weak, his vision blurred, yet his eyes still burned. He whispered softly, "Not for the galaxy, but for himself. They can destroy the body, but never the spirit. They will never understand, and that is why they will never win." Cliffhanger. Ending. The alien fleet prepared a weapon, capable of burning an entire continent in one strike. The skies glowed as the weapon charged, and every human on the ground and in the skies looked upward. Elias closed his eyes and whispered, "Let them come. The spirit will answer." "Ish the work the first could not," Elias whispered to himself. "Let them come. They will see. They will all see." The awakening of the stars. The galaxy watched in silence as Earth burned and humanity fought on. From the furthest colonies of the Council to the hidden outposts of forgotten races, reports carried the same shocking message. Humans refused to break. For every city reduced to ash, another flag rose from the ruins. For every ship turned to wreckage, another pilot sacrificed themselves in defiance. The Council had declared them doomed, but their doom had become a story, and stories spread faster than fire. In markets where alien traders once mocked humans, whispers began to change. Species who had never cared for Earth now spoke of their bravery. On frontier worlds, enslaved populations who had bent under the weight of the Council for centuries whispered the word human as if it were a secret of strength. They asked each other how a fragile race could fight when even the stars seemed to burn against them, and they began to wonder if perhaps they too could rise. Captain Elias lay wounded in the medbay of his crippled flagship. His body was battered, his uniform torn, but his spirit was unbroken. Around him, his crew worked with desperate energy. repairing consoles, sealing wounds, keeping the ship alive when logic said it should already be dead, Elias forced himself to his feet, leaning against the wall. His voice was hoarse yet steady. "We may not win this war, but we have already changed it. Look around you. Do you not see? The galaxy is watching, the galaxy is listening, and they will remember that humanity did not fall in silence." His words carried across what remained of the human channels. In distant council worlds, soldiers and citizens alike began to question the decree. How could a species so condemned show such strength? How could creatures so fragile fight with hearts of iron? Even council soldiers stationed on Earth began to feel unease. Some lowered their weapons when they looked into human eyes. Others spoke quietly of the songs that echoed from prisoner camps, songs of defiance that no chains could silence. The more the council struck, the more unbreakable humanity became. The old historian in the council chamber watched the reports with solemn eyes. He had warned them, but they had not listened. Now he rose to speak again. "You believed you were writing the end of humanity, but you have only written the beginning of their legend. Do you not see how the galaxy whispers their name? Do you not see how your decree of doom has become their shield? You thought you could erase them, but you have made them eternal." His words fell heavy in the chamber, but the arrogant leaders dismissed him. Their fear hid beneath their anger, and their pride blinded them to the truth. On one distant world, a race long enslaved by the council saw the human broadcasts. They watched humans raise flags in the ruins, fight with broken weapons, and sing in the ashes. For the first time in centuries, they too raised their heads and whispered, "If they can fight, so can we." Small revolts began to spark across the council's territories. Worlds that had once been silent now shouted in defiance. The spirit of humanity had crossed the stars, igniting flames in hearts that had forgotten how to burn. Elias knew this was their true weapon, not their ships, not their rifles, but their spirit. He told his people, "Every act of survival we show is a message. Every strike we deliver is a story. Every breath we take is proof that the council was wrong. Do not think of yourself as only one soldier, one survivor. You are a signal. You are the answer the galaxy has been waiting for." His words spread through whispers, through recordings, through the memories of those who fought beside him, until humanity's spirit was no longer just their own. It belonged to countless others across the stars. The alien fleets tried to end the battle quickly, deploying their superweapon that could burn entire continents in a single strike. The skies glowed with deadly energy. But as the weapon charged, humans launched a desperate counterattack. Old fighters and damaged ships threw themselves at the enemy, not to survive, but to delay. They collided with enemy cannons, detonated engines near reactors, and gave their lives to stall the weapon. The council commanders watched in disbelief as a doomed fleet held off their superweapon with nothing but sacrifice. On the ground, humanity's anthem of survival grew louder. In one ruined city, thousands of survivors gathered as alien troops advanced. Instead of running, they stood in the open, raising broken banners and torches. Their voices rose in song, not of fear, but of defiance. The aliens hesitated, for in that moment they realized the truth. No weapon could silence a spirit like this. The council's order of doom began to unravel. What was meant to be a declaration of weakness had become the greatest proof of strength. Other species who had once mocked humanity now sent secret messages to Elias, promising supplies, offering shelter. Some even whispered of joining the fight. For the first time, the council's iron grip began to crack, not from weapons, but from belief. Captain Elias stood on the bridge of his broken ship, looking out at the stars through shattered glass. His voice was quiet, yet every soul who heard him carried his words forever. We were meant to be ashes, but instead we are a fire. We were meant to be forgotten, but instead we are remembered. They tried to doom us, but they have awakened the stars themselves. Humanity endures, and now the galaxy will endure with us. Cliffhanger. Ending, as he finished his words, a message arrived on the console. It was not from a human colony, but from a distant alien world. The message was simple, but it shook the crew to their core. We are with you. Humanity is not alone anymore. The verdict reversed. The great chamber of the Galactic Council stood in silence. The walls of black stone and silver banners that once shone with authority now trembled under the weight of whispers. Reports had poured in from across the stars. Worlds, rising in revolt, soldiers refusing to fire, enslaved races chanting the name of humanity as if it were a beacon of hope. The decree that had declared humanity doomed was now a curse upon the Council itself, for instead of erasing a race, it had given birth to a legend. The reptilian head speaker slammed his claw against the table, sparks flying as his voice roared. Through the chamber, "This cannot be allowed. Humanity is nothing, a mistake of flesh. They must be crushed until their spirit is dust." But his words were drowned by murmurs of doubt. Council members shifted uneasily in their seats. Some avoided his gaze, some whispered in fear, others in shame, for the galaxy had changed, and even in this chamber of power, the tide of humanity's defiance had reached their ears. At the center of the hall, the old historian rose once more. His voice was calm, but carried the strength of truth. You declared them doomed, but they endure. You declared them weak, but they rise. You declared their story over, but you have only written the beginning. You thought you would silence them. Yet their spirit speaks louder than your decree. You wanted the galaxy to fear humanity. Instead, the galaxy now follows them. This is not their end, Council. It is yours. His words echoed, and none could deny them. Meanwhile, far from the Council chamber, Captain Elias stood upon the bridge of a rebuilt vessel. His wounds still ached, his ship bore the scars of fire, yet his eyes looked forward with unshaken resolve. Around him gathered not only humans, but also alien allies, species once enslaved, once silenced, now standing beside humanity. The message that had come in the last battle had spread further, and one by one, worlds that had never dared to resist now joined the cause. The galaxy was awakening, and its heartbeat was human. Elias addressed his people, his words broadcast across the networks that reached friend and foe alike. They declared us doomed, they tried to erase us, they brought fire and death to our world, and yet we endure. But this is no longer only about humanity. This is about every soul who has been told they are nothing, every world that has been crushed beneath arrogance, every child who has been silenced by fear. We fight for more than survival now. We fight for freedom. We fight for spirit. We fight so that the Council may never again decide who lives and who dies. His words spread like fire, igniting hope across countless stars. The alien fleets that once moved with arrogance now hesitated. Their soldiers whispered about the humans they fought. Some spoke of prisoners who sang in chains, of children who raised flags in ruins, of captains who fought battles already lost yet fought as if victory still lived in their hearts. The truth spread faster than orders, and doubt infected the councils. Armies. The war that had begun as extermination now became a test of belief, and the Council was losing. On Earth, survivors rebuilt amid the ashes, homes rose from rubble, crops grew in poisoned soil, schools reopened in shattered halls. Humanity refused to vanish, and their resilience became the greatest weapon of all. Even in ruin, they stood tall, proving to the galaxy that doom was nothing but a word, and words could not kill spirit. Children who had once cried in fear now stood with pride, for they knew their generation carried the legacy of defiance. The Council, desperate, gathered once more to pass judgment, but this time their chamber was not filled with laughter. It was filled with fear. The historian stood again, his eyes glowing. When you decreed their doom, you believed history would obey you. But history does not bend to arrogance. History bends to truth, and the truth is this: humanity is not doomed. Humanity is eternal. Their spirit cannot be broken, and now their spirit lives in others as well. You thought to destroy them, but instead you have destroyed your own authority. In the ruins of a city once reduced to ashes, Captain Elias stood before his people. Behind him stood not only humans but alien allies who had taken up the human banner. Together they raised a new flag, stitched from torn cloth and bloodied. Hands, a symbol of unity and defiance. Elias's voice was strong as he declared, "The council once spoke their verdict, but their verdict was a lie. The true verdict is here, written not in decrees, but in survival. Written not in laws, but in spirit. Written not in fear, but in fire. And the truth is simple. Humanity endures, humanity defies, humanity lives." All across the galaxy, oppressed races rose in unison, chanting words that once belonged only to humans: "We endure, we endure, we endure." The sound carried across, the stars like thunder, shaking even the proudest empires. The council's decree was forgotten. Replaced by the memory of a fragile race that stood unbroken in fire, Captain Elias looked into the endless night sky. The scars of war remained, the losses were countless, but the spirit of his people blazed brighter than ever. He whispered softly. To himself, words meant for every soul who had fought, every soul who had fallen, every soul who still lived. They tried to doom us, but instead they revealed us. They tried to end us, but instead they awakened us. They thought our story was finished, but our story has only just begun. Final closing scene. The galaxy did not remember the decree of the council. It remembered the defiance of humanity, and in that defiance the stars themselves had awakened. Humanity was no longer a race alone on a fragile world. Humanity had become a spirit shared across the cosmos, unbroken, eternal, unyielding.
Thank you for joining Eternal Human Spirit, where humanity always rises again.